This is Arise America.
And speaking to reporters at Joint Base Andrews before flying to Brussels to meet with NATO leaders, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says the world must hold Russia accountable for the atrocities in Bucha.
Good morning, everyone. As this Russian tide is receding from parts of Ukraine, the world is seeing the depth and destruction left in its wake. And we're seeing, in particular, the horror that's been left behind at Bucha. Something that is touching people literally around the world. What we've seen in Bucha is not the random act of a rogue unit. It's a deliberate campaign to kill, to torture, to rape, to commit atrocities. The reports are more than credible. The evidence is there for the world to see.
And for analysis on these latest developments, let's bring in Arise U.S. correspondent Eric Ham. Eric, thank you for joining me. Let's begin from the White House, where Barack Obama returns after 5 years for the celebration of an act that has survived 3 attempts to have it replaced. Tell us what Obama and his former vice have been saying.
Well, look, it's been 10 years since the Affordable Care Act, also known as the Obamacare, was signed into law. And today, President Barack Obama not only marked his return to the White House since leaving office as president of the United States, but he was at the White House to also commemorate the passage of the Affordable Care Act. This is a law that went into effect that allowed millions of Americans with pre-existing conditions to actually be able to not only have access to health care, but to be able to afford it. In the United States, oftentimes those with pre-existing conditions have a very difficult time getting health care at affordable rates. The Affordable Care Act allowed for insurance companies, or made it law for insurance companies to provide health care for millions of Americans who do have pre-existing conditions. And President Obama was at the White House today talking about this, but not only talking about it, but also President Biden was speaking about how his administration over the last 14 months have actually improved the law and also provided billions of dollars to allow for millions of Americans to also receive health care. In fact, given the fact that COVID-19 has already killed nearly 1 million Americans and infected many others, particularly with long-term COVID, what we're seeing now is that this new law, or the improvements, particularly with the Biden administration providing additional resources for Obamacare or the Affordable Care Act, has allowed even more millions of Americans to have access to health care. In fact, just a few days ago, we know that the House of Representatives passed legislation that actually lowers the cost of insulin drugs for those who are diabetic, who also receive insulin. Now those costs will come down. So what we're seeing since President Biden has taken control of the White House, Democrats have taken control of the House and Senate, we are seeing now a laser-like focus by this administration and Democrats focusing on trying to deliver key access to affordable health care to millions of Americans.
Well, Eric, let's hope that this move becomes a step or perhaps a spark as they head into the midterm elections. But let's move to the United Nations Security Council, where we've seen global outrage today over the alleged atrocities in Ukraine. And the U.S. seems to be, of course, spearheading a campaign for a war crimes trial. So tell me, what exactly are the major steps taken to achieve this?
Well, as of right now, what we saw take place at the United Nations Security Council, a lot of this is symbolic. Even what we're seeing here is an effort to try to remove Russia from the UN Human Rights Council, something that the United States actually spearheaded years ago with Libya. It does not necessarily change the tactics or change what we're seeing in Ukraine. It's just another symbol, another tool to highlight the atrocities that continue to be shown all over millions of televisions across the world. But what we're seeing, at least in Washington right now, the White House has already made clear that it is their intention to go after and implement additional sanctions on Russia later this week. In fact, just before coming on air, we got news from the Treasury Department that they are also looking to implement sanctions on a major cyber security entity in Russia. And so the Biden administration is looking to add additional sanctions, also strengthening sanctions that are already in place on Russian entities.
Zelensky warns there could be more atrocities yet to be discovered. Is the U.S. prepared for this? And what kind of discussions are being held to prepare for a worst-case scenario?
Well, as far as a worst-case scenario, we heard a little bit about this yesterday from the National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan. Unfortunately, the White House has been very tight-lipped about what the worst-case scenario is and what the consequences might be. But what we do know from our discussions at the Pentagon with Admiral Kirby, the Pentagon's press person, is that the Pentagon is actually expediting their military aid to Ukraine. Already, just in the last 72 hours, more than $300 million in additional military aid has been sent to Ukraine. And we're now told that they're opening up a new avenue of providing resources with a direct aid coming from U.S. military contractors to Ukraine. So there's the Pentagon, and then there are direct contractors that contract out to the Pentagon, where instead of those goods going directly to the Pentagon and going to Ukraine, they're going straight from the contractor to Ukraine.
Now, the big test, obviously, for the UN and other global institutions is whether they will act on these allegations. Could a war crimes trial actually happen, especially for a sitting president?
I think that would be a question that right now we don't know the answer to, but we have heard from the Secretary of State, Tony Blinken, that they are actively working with the ICC. President Biden has made clear he is happy to have the ICC run the point on this operation, and that the United States will certainly work to provide investigative material to the International Criminal Court. Will they be able to actually do so? Of course, that's the big question.
Very well said, Eric. Thank you very much for joining me on the program.
This is Arise America.